It was just past midnight when I first saw the figure at the edge of the pier. The fog clung to the water, thick and motionless, swallowing the light from the few dim street lamps along the harbor. A silhouette stood there, motionless, tall, thin, with long hair trailing over its shoulders. But its face, I could not see it. I had come here because of the stories. Old Reddit posts whispered legends about a woman who waits for lost fishermen. People called her the Mourning Widow. They said she appears on foggy nights looking for someone who will never return. I laughed quietly at first. A chill crept over me, crawling up my spine. Then the water rippled unnaturally, and I realized I wasn't alone on the pier. My footsteps echoed, too loud in the dense mist. I tried to take a step forward, and the figure shifted slightly, just enough to send my heart racing. The wind carried a whisper, soft and sorrowful. Come back. I froze. The voice was neither male nor female, but it carried grief so sharp it made my chest ache. I reached for my phone, trying to light the path, but the screen flickered, displaying only static. The figure took a step closer. No sound, yet I could feel the pressure, the weight of its gaze. I swallowed hard, my throat dry, my hands trembling. Then it spoke again, closer this time. Why are you here? They will not come back. I couldn't move. A sense of wrongness gripped the air, pressing against my lungs. I remembered the posts. She waits for the living to follow the water, hoping they join the lost. And suddenly I understood. This wasn't just a story. The Mourning Widow is real. I took a tentative step backward. The fog shifted, thickened. Her head tilted unnaturally, long hair brushing over the water's surface. A soft laugh, hollow and echoing, filled the pier. They never return. But you might. I stumbled back, heart hammering, legs weak. The legend said that those who make eye contact with her vanish, lost to the harbor forever. I didn't want to look, but curiosity, that stupid human curiosity, forced my eyes upward. Her face, half hidden, pale, eyes reflecting the faint pier light, endless and black like the ocean depths. I tried to scream, but no sound came. The fog swirled violently around her. I felt my feet lift slightly, as if gravity itself was weakening. A voice, soft and insistent, whispered directly in my mind, "Come to me." The water behind her churned, though there was no wind, no current. A small wooden boat rocked violently, creaking as if trying to escape. I tried to turn, to run, but my body refused. The legend said she chooses who stays and who goes. I realized then that I was already chosen. The pier groaned beneath me. The fog thickened, swallowing the railings, the water, the distant lights. I forced myself to whisper, barely audible, "Stay away from me." Her laughter rose above the fog, soft at first, then harsh, echoing, surrounding me. The water at the edge of the pier licked my boots. I stumbled backward, trying to flee, and felt icy fingers brush against my ankles. I tripped, falling to the planks, the fog wrapping around me like a shroud. And I realized the stories weren't exaggerations. The Mourning Widow doesn't just haunt. She waits. She tests. She consumes those who linger. I forced myself to my feet, backing toward the harbor edge. Every instinct screamed at me to leave, but the fog pulled me forward. Her voice echoed in my mind again. "Join them. They're waiting." I closed my eyes, stumbled, and felt the cold water splash over my boots. A hand, or the memory of a hand, brushed my shoulder. I opened my eyes. The figure was gone. The pier was empty, the fog slowly receding. And yet, I could still feel her. The fog lifted slowly, revealing the harbor in faint pale moonlight. I sat on the edge of the pier, knees pulled to my chest, shivering from both cold and fear. The water lapped quietly, almost comforting, but every ripple seemed alive, as if the ocean itself remembered her presence. I thought back to the Reddit threads that warned of her, people disappearing after a simple encounter. I remembered the small wooden boats bobbing violently even when there was no wind. A distant sound, soft, wet footsteps on wood, made me freeze. Her figure appeared again, standing at the edge of the fog. Her hair trailed across the water, pale as death. Her eyes were endless voids, looking straight into me. I tried to stand, to move, to run, but my legs were leaden. She spoke, a voice soft as mist, curling around my ears. Do you remember them? They waited, and now you will too. I shook my head, whispering, almost pleading, I'm not one of them. I'm not leaving. Her head tilted slightly, and I could feel the weight of her sorrow pressing into my chest. The air grew colder. The fog thickened, wrapping around my body, constricting like a living thing. She stepped closer. I could see a reflection in the water, distorted and flickering. Then, almost imperceptibly, I heard something beneath the water, a voice faint and echoing, calling my name. Alex. Panic surged. I lunged backward, scraping my hands on the wooden planks. Her laughter, hollow and broken, followed me. They all come back. They always do. I scrambled to my feet and ran toward the harbor entrance. Every step felt like moving through water, slow and resistant. The fog twisted, forming shapes, faces, hands, the silhouettes of lost fishermen who had vanished years before. They reached toward me silently, pleading, warning, or inviting. I couldn't tell. I finally reached solid ground beyond the pier. Breathing heavily, my chest burning, I looked back. The figure of the mourning widow was gone. Yet the water still whispered, faint voices carried on the wind, join us. I stumbled into the streetlights of the city. The warm, yellow glow, almost alien after the icy gray of the fog. I kept walking, not daring to look back. Days passed, but the memory remained. Every shadow along the water, every foggy evening brought her to mind. I researched her history, the origin of the legend, a young widow who had lost her husband at sea, who wandered the piers in mourning, waiting for him to return forever. Somewhere between grief and madness, she became something else, an echo, a spirit bound to the harbor. I realized the Reddit stories were warnings, fragments of truth scattered across the internet. And I had experienced the truth. At night, I cannot sleep near the water. If I do, I hear the gentle lapping of waves, soft footsteps on wood, and a whisper curling through the mist. Come back. I have learned to avoid the piers after dark. Yet sometimes when the fog rises, I can't help but glance at the water, knowing she waits, patient, eternal. I keep my distance. I never answer. I never linger. Because she waits, and she remembers, and I am not the first, nor will I be the last. The mourning widow is real. She waits, she watches, and those who linger are lost. It was past midnight when the fog rolled thick over the river, cloaking the world in gray and shadow. I had walked this path countless times during the day, but at night everything changed. Trees that I knew were crooked and gnarled seemed to stretch upward like skeletal hands. Reaching toward a moon I could barely see, the air smelled of wet soil and decay, mixed with a faint metallic tang that made my stomach churn. I should not have been here. My grandmother's voice echoed in my memory, trembling. The river listens at night. If she calls, do not answer, do not follow. I had told myself I wasn't afraid. Superstition had no power over me. Yet with every step, a chill climbed my spine. My flashlight sliced feebly through the fog, illuminating only fragments of the path ahead. Shadows shifted at the edges of the light, shapes twisting as though they were alive. And then I heard it, a soft, plaintive cry that seemed to echo off the river and the trees alike. Ay, mis hijos. It was unlike anything I had ever heard. Human, yes, but stretched thin with sorrow and rage. My heart hammered in my chest. I froze. The fog pressed against me like a living thing. For a moment, I thought it might be some animal, perhaps a stray dog calling in distress, but the tone, the pure aching desperation, was unmistakably hers. I remembered the stories. La Llorona, the woman who had drowned her children in a fit of grief, cursed to wander rivers forever, calling for the living to replace the dead. Tales told to children, whispered warnings passed down through generations. I had laughed at them until now. I could feel the temperature drop as the fog thickened. Every breath came in clouds, curling in front of me and disappearing too quickly. The river's surface, usually reflecting the moon, was now a black mirror, and in that mirror I glimpsed something that made my blood run cold. A pale face staring back at me, eyes hollow, mouth twisted in sorrow. Oh, I stumbled back. My flashlight slipped from my hand, clattering against the rocks. Darkness enveloped me. The fog moved in strange curling patterns, forming shapes at the edges of my vision, shapes that resembled long hair, wet and glistening, drifting toward me without sound. Arm! I tried to speak, to call out, but my voice failed me. My throat tightened as if the night itself had claimed it, and then I felt it, a presence hovering just behind me, cold and sorrowful. My skin prickled, my instincts screamed to flee, but my legs refused to obey. She stepped into view, emerging from the fog. Her dress, soaked and clinging, whispered across the ground. Long black hair obscured her face, yet I felt her gaze burn into me. The river itself seemed to respond to her presence, tiny ripples crawling outward from her feet as if the water feared her too. Her voice came again, soft, yet curling through my very bones. Ay, mis hijos, mis hijos. I backed away, stumbling over roots and uneven ground, each time I tried to turn. Her reflection appeared in the water, a face impossibly close, hollow eyes screaming silently. I felt the tug of her sorrow, a cold, aching weight pressing into my chest. I ran blindly, guided only by memory and the faint glow of distant street lights. Branches tore at my clothing and hair, roots caught at my feet, but I forced myself onward. The cry followed me, echoing through the fog, mis hijos, mis hijos. My mind raced. She was real. The stories, the warnings, the whispered legends, they were all true, and I was too foolish, too curious to stay safe. I glimpsed her at the edge of the water again, closer this time. She raised a hand, dripping water, fingers curling like claws. My breath hitched. I stumbled backward, tripping over the roots. The river rippled unnaturally, a black wave rising slightly, as if she had disturbed it with intent. I forced myself to my feet, moving faster, heart hammering, lungs burning. Each step felt heavy, as if the ground were working against me. Whispers filled the air, soft at first, then multiplying, echoing from the fog. Stay, stay, stay. The fog thickened, curling around me, tangling my hair and clothing. Her cries grew louder, overlapping in a haunting rhythm that made my teeth rattle. My legs shook, almost giving out, but I forced them to move. I had to reach the street lights, had to escape the river's pull. Finally, I stumbled onto a worn path leading to the first houses. My heart raced, my chest burned, and my entire body shook. I glanced back once. The fog had cleared slightly, but I could still see her in the reflection of the water, standing silently, watching. I made it home, shaking, drenched, unable to speak. My grandmother's warnings echoed in my mind. She remembers those who see her. She waits. Sleep did not come that night. Every creak of the old house sounded like footsteps along the river bank. Every shadow seemed to twitch with motion. I dreamed of the river, of her hollow eyes, of the way the water rippled unnaturally beneath her feet. For nights afterward, the whispers followed me, carried on the wind. Ay, mis hijos, mis hijos. I realized that the legend was not a story. It was a warning, etched into every branch, every ripple, every shadow along the river, and I had been foolish enough to ignore it. Even now, weeks later, I cannot look at the river without feeling her presence, cold and mournful, waiting for those who wander too close. She is patient. She remembers. And when she calls, you answer, even if you do not want to. The fog pressed against my skin like a damp cloth, chilling me through the thin jacket I had foolishly worn. Every step along the riverbank felt heavier than the last, the mud sucking at my shoes, as though the earth itself was trying to keep me there. The river glimmered dimly, a black ribbon reflecting moonlight in uneven flashes, and in that shimmer I glimpsed her again. Her hair hung in long, wet strands, and I noticed the subtle sway of her body, almost imperceptible, as if she moved with the rhythm of the water itself. Her eyes, hollow and endless, followed me, and the sorrow emanating from her felt like a tangible weight pressing on my chest. I stumbled, nearly falling, and whispered to myself, "It's just a reflection. It's just a story." The sound of her crying grew louder, overlapping, layering, echoing against the fog and the trees. Mis hijos, mis hijos. Each repetition sent a shiver crawling up my spine, and I felt tears prick my eyes, not from fear alone, but from the aching human grief that seemed to pour from her very being. I thought of the legends, of the countless warnings whispered to children and travelers. Each story painted her differently, sometimes a wailing ghost, sometimes a monstrous force of vengeance. But tonight I understood that none of the words could capture her presence. She was real, and she was waiting. Branches scraped my arms as I tried to flee, roots catching my shoes, the ground uneven and treacherous. The fog warped, forming shapes that teased the edges of my vision, figures of children, blurred and indistinct, floating above the river's surface before disappearing into nothing. My mind screamed, urging me to run faster, but my body refused, stiff with terror. Oh! A sudden splash rang out across the river, and I froze. Water droplets landed on my neck, cold and heavy. I turned slightly and saw her, La Llorona, emerging from the mist, closer than I could have imagined. Her dress clung to her, dripping with water, and the air around her seemed to shimmer like the world itself was bending to her presence. Her voice, soft yet unbearably sorrowful, reached into my chest. "Ay, mis hijos, why did you leave me?" The words were almost human, almost pleading, and yet they carried a menace that made my knees quake. I stumbled backward, trying to put distance between us, but the river seemed to stretch endlessly, the fog thickening to the point where I could barely see my own hands. Shadows twisted at the edges of the light from my flashlight, forming long, thin arms that reached for me. Panic surged through me. I remembered my grandmother's stories, how she had survived a close encounter by staying completely still, refusing to acknowledge La Llorona. I tried to summon the discipline, telling myself to freeze, to not move, to not meet her gaze. But instinct betrayed me. I moved my feet. She reacted immediately, stepping closer, her presence like a wave crashing over me. I felt the air shift, the wind picking up unnaturally, carrying the scent of wet earth, decayed leaves, and something metallic, almost like blood. Her hands, dripping and pale, reached toward me, and for a moment I was paralyzed. The sorrow in her eyes was overwhelming, like a physical force pressing on my heart. She whispered again, closer this time, "Do not leave. Stay with me." I fell to the ground, hands scraping against wet rocks and mud, and scrambled desperately to my feet. Every instinct screamed to flee, yet my mind was spinning, overwhelmed by the intensity of her gaze, the endless grief, the impossibility of escape. Suddenly, I imagined the children from the legends, small figures, faceless in the fog, reaching out from the water, tugging at my legs, whispering my name, pleading, crying. I screamed and stumbled forward, heart pounding, lungs burning, arms flailing. The fog shifted, and for a moment I glimpsed the river's surface, black, rippling unnaturally, reflecting hundreds of faces. Some were children, some were women, some unrecognizable. Each one's mouth moved silently, lips whispering, "Stay, stay, stay." My flashlight flickered. Darkness swallowed the path ahead. I was lost, unsure where the river ended and the land began. My stomach twisted with nausea, and my hands shook violently as I tried to grip the flashlight, its light weak against the consuming fog. Then a single clear cry rang out, piercing through the fog, "Mis hijos, mis hijos." It was closer now, so close I felt it brushing against my shoulder, cold and wet. I spun around, and there she was, standing, silent, dripping, hollow-eyed. Her mouth moved, forming words without sound, a silent accusation, a silent hunger. I ran. I did not look back. The ground shifted beneath me, the trees leaning inward, branches clawing at my face. I tripped over roots, rolled across wet soil, and scrambled up the bank to the first dim street light. My lungs were on fire, my heart a hammering drum. The street light illuminated the world in pale, shaky light. The fog had thinned slightly. I dared a glance back. The river seemed calm again, normal almost, but I knew better. Her eyes were watching, from the shadows, from the reflections in the water. She was patient. She remembered me. I stumbled home, soaked, trembling, and locked every door and window, but sleep did not come. Every creak in the old wooden floors sounded like footsteps along the riverbank. Every shadow on the walls seemed to shift, reaching toward me. And at night, in my dreams, she was there, standing silently in the fog, reaching, crying, her hollow eyes endless. I could feel her sorrow, her rage, her insatiable longing pressing into me, whispering, curling into my chest, "Ay, mis hijos, mis hijos." The river had claimed her, but it had also claimed a piece of me, and I knew that when curiosity called, when the fog thickened again, I would hear her and I would be drawn back, unable to resist. The fog thickened, curling around my ankles, crawling up my legs like liquid fingers. I could barely see the river now, only hear it, the slow, rhythmic lapping of water against the muddy banks. Each step I took felt heavier, as if the night itself were pulling me backward, and every instinct screamed to run faster, yet my legs refused to obey fully. I tried to listen, to hear where the cries came from, but the fog distorted everything. It carried her voice in twisted echoes, bouncing it off the trees, and water, so I could not tell whether she was ahead, behind, or beside me. Ay, mis hijos. Each repetition pulled at my chest like a vice, twisting hope and terror together. I stumbled over a hidden root. nearly falling, and my hand scraped against the wet mud. A sudden reflection caught my eye in the black water, a pale face staring back at me, wide-eyed and hollow, hair floating in unnatural waves. I froze. It was impossible to look away. I felt it reach through the mist, through the air, through me. I whispered to myself, trying to convince my own mind. It's just a reflection, just fog and shadows. It's not real. But the world shifted. The air grew colder, heavy, metallic. The smell of wet earth mixed with decay, and something like rust and blood hung faintly on the wind. I realized then that she was not a reflection. She was here, moving closer. The river rippled unnaturally, dark waves sliding silently toward my feet as though the water itself were alive. I tried to run, but the ground betrayed me. Mud sucked at my shoes, roots tangled my legs, and branches clawed at my arms and face. Each movement felt delayed, slowed, and every shadow at the edges of the fog seemed to stretch and reach, forming long, twisting arms. Her cries became louder, layered, endless. They echoed in the trees across the river, vibrating inside my chest. Mis hijos, mis hijos, mis hijos. I could feel the syllables dragging through my mind, wrapping around my thoughts, suffocating me with grief and longing. I glanced back. She was there, closer than before, pale, wet, hair plastered to her face. Her dress clung to her, dripping black water, as if the river itself had birthed her. She lifted one hand slowly, deliberately, and the fog seemed to move with her gesture, curling around her fingers like smoke. I felt compelled to run again, though my mind spun with terror. As I moved, the trees twisted, the fog thickened, and I heard whispers that weren't hers, tiny, childlike voices echoing from the water. Come, stay, join us. My flashlight flickered, weak against the thickening fog. Shadows danced unnaturally, twisting into faces I could barely recognize, some laughing, some crying silently, and some staring with hollow eyes that mirrored hers. I tried to focus on the path, on the distant town lights, but everything blurred. I tripped, rolled into the mud, and lay there gasping, mud in my mouth and eyes stinging with tears. The river bubbled softly nearby, a dark mirror of the sky above, and I thought I saw movement beneath the water's surface, shapes writhing, stretching toward me, unseen arms reaching up. She was closer. The fog swirled around her like smoke, her hair lifting as if underwater, floating in the cold air. Her hollow eyes locked onto mine, and a strange, cold vibration passed through the air, making my teeth rattle and my stomach churn. She whispered my name. You. You saw me. You remembered. I scrambled to my feet, stumbling toward a dim streetlight visible through the fog. Each step felt like wading through thick syrup. My lungs burned, my heart slammed against my rib cage, and the world felt impossibly distant and close at once. Every sound, the water, the leaves, the cries, vibrated inside me, a chorus of sorrow and threat. Branches tore at my clothing, mud stuck to my skin, and shadows shifted as if alive. I tried to ignore them, focused only on moving, but the whispers multiplied. I heard her cries layered with the faint, pleading voices of children drifting across the river. Stay, stay, come with us. The river's edge seemed to stretch and twist unnaturally. One moment I was close, the next I was stumbling farther back as though the ground itself were conspiring to trap me. And then a splash, close, deliberate, water spraying onto my back. I gasped, whipped around, and there she was, pale, silent, wet, and impossibly close. Her hand reached toward me, dripping black water, curling like claws. Her sorrow, palpable and immense, pressed on me as though the night itself were alive. I stumbled backward, trying to distance myself, and she moved, sliding effortlessly over the riverbank, following me with inhuman patience. I could barely breathe. The air smelled of damp earth, rust, decay, and something unnameable, ancient, and metallic. My mind spun with fear and disbelief. I whispered to myself, "It's a story. It's just a legend. I can survive this." But her voice answered, curling through the fog. "No, you belong here, with them, my children." I ran blindly, mud and roots tearing at my shoes, branches whipping across my face. Every step felt like wading through eternity, the fog wrapping around me, twisting, forming shapes that mimicked her, multiplied, surrounding me in 1,000 hollow faces. I stumbled onto the path leading to the town lights, my chest burned, lungs heaving, vision blurred with tears and exhaustion. The fog thinned slightly here, yet I knew she was still watching, somewhere in the shadows, in the water, in the air, patient, waiting. Finally, I reached the first street light. Its pale glow seemed to anchor reality, to separate me from the river, from her. I sank to the ground, trembling uncontrollably. My hands were scraped and bleeding, my clothes soaked, my hair plastered to my face. And still I could hear her voice, soft and endless. "Ay, mis hijos, mis hijos." For weeks afterward, I could not sleep. Every creak in the house sounded like footsteps along the riverbank. Every shadow seemed to twist, flicker, and reach. I began to see her in reflections, brief glimpses in the darkened windows, in the water in my sink, even in mirrors. She did not leave. She could not leave, and I knew, deep in my bones, that she remembered me. I would never be safe near a river again, not at night, not ever. The nights grew heavier, denser, as if the fog itself had weight. I could feel it pressing in on me from every side, folding the room into a river bank where she waited. Every shadow was a shape, every whisper a warning. I tried to focus, tried to breathe, but my body trembled uncontrollably. Her cries echoed in my mind constantly now. Not just at the river, not just in dreams. Even when I closed my eyes during the day, I could hear her voice, soft and endless, curling through my thoughts. I began to feel a tug of the river, even in my home, a cold pull under my feet as if the water beneath the earth sought me. I resisted at first, leaning against walls, pressing my hands to the floor, whispering desperately to myself, "Stay away, stay away." But one night, sleep claimed me. I awoke on the river bank. Mist rolled around my ankles. Moonlight shimmered over black water, the river unnaturally still, yet alive. And there she was, closer than ever, emerging from the fog as if drawn by my dreams. Her hollow eyes bore into mine. Her hair floated in the windless night, damp and heavy. Her dress clung to her body, soaked dark, dripping onto the wet ground. The river responded to her presence, ripples moving outward without sound, bending the air, the fog, the very light around her. I tried to speak. Nothing came. My legs shook violently, unable to obey, unable to flee, and then I felt it, her sorrow pressing into me, tangible, a cold weight on my chest. Every breath burned, every heartbeat pounded like a drum, echoing the rhythm of the river. She whispered my name. "You. You cannot escape. You saw me. You remembered." My mind spiraled. I tried to rationalize, tried to convince myself it was a hallucination, a nightmare. But then I felt her hands on my shoulders, cold and wet, pressing me down. The fog curled around me, wrapping me in her sorrow, her rage, her endless longing. Shapes appeared in the mist, children, faceless, small hands reaching toward me, tugging at my sleeves, my hair, my skin. Their silent cries overlapped with hers, a chorus of accusation and grief that rattled my bones. I screamed, a raw sound that tore through the fog, and stumbled backward. My feet sank into the mud at the riverbank, roots tangling around them, grasping, holding me in place. She stepped closer, the water rising unnaturally around her feet, black and swirling, reaching toward me like claws. I scrambled, desperately clawing at the ground, dragging myself upward. My lungs burned, my chest ached, my eyes stung with tears and river water. Every instinct screamed to run, to escape, but the river and the fog conspired to hold me there, to force me to witness her, to remember her, to answer her call. She knelt suddenly, water dripping from her hair, her hollow eyes fixed on me. Her voice was softer now, impossibly sorrowful. Stay, stay, stay with me. I could feel myself drawn forward, compelled by her presence, by the weight of centuries of grief, by the pull of the river. My hands reached out unconsciously, my body moving despite my mind screaming. The fog thickened, curling around me, forming her shape, forming shapes of children, twisting, reaching. I realized then that I could not resist. The river called, the fog lured, the voices whispered endlessly, and in that instant I understood the truth of the legend. She claimed those who saw her, those who remembered, those foolish enough to wander too close. Suddenly, a flash of moonlight broke through the fog. I saw the river, still and black. I saw the path to town, faintly lit. I saw her standing there, watching, patient, eternal. My mind screamed for me to move, to escape, but a piece of me had already been claimed. I bolted toward the faint light, slipping through mud and roots, stumbling, tearing at branches, the whispers trailing me like a living shadow. She did not follow visibly, yet I could feel her, pressing, always pressing, pulling me back toward the river. Oh. I reached the town finally, panting, soaked, exhausted, the fog thinning as I crossed the first streetlight. The warmth of human habitation was slight but palpable. I collapsed, chest heaving, trembling uncontrollably. My mind struggled to comprehend what had occurred, what had chased me, what still waited. Weeks passed. I avoided the river entirely, stayed indoors during foggy nights, closed all windows, locked all doors. But the memory, the weight, the presence, none of it left me. At night, I could hear the whispers in the corners of my mind, smell the damp earth and the metallic tang of water, feel the cold press of her sorrow against my chest. I could see her sometimes in reflections, mirrors, windows, puddles, even in daylight, faint and twisted, always watching. I knew she was patient. She remembers. She waits. And when she calls, one day, there will be no escape. And that is when I understood truly that the river does not forget. She does not forget. Even now, I avoid rivers, fog, and reflections. But the pull is constant, subtle, unending. Her cries echo in my mind. Mis hijos, mis hijos. the nights after the river incident were unbearable. Ah, the house no longer felt safe. Shadows stretched unnaturally. Corners of rooms seemed to flicker with movement that wasn't there. Every creak of the floorboards, every whisper of wind through the trees sounded like her approach, silent, patient, inevitable. I lay awake, heart hammering, staring at the ceiling, trying to convince myself that it was only imagination. It's just a story, just a dream. Nothing is real. But the cold presence pressing against my chest said otherwise. It seeped into my lungs, curling around my heart, twisting my thoughts. Sometimes I woke to the faintest sound of running water beneath my floorboards, soft but deliberate, echoing in the silence. My sheets were damp, smelling of mud and something metallic, something older than memory itself, and always, in the dark, that whisper curling into my skull like smoke, mis hijos, mis hijos. Even reflections betrayed me. Mirrors, windows, the gleam of a spoon, anything shiny could show her. A glimpse of hair, pale face, hollow eyes, lips curling in eternal sorrow. I tried to turn away, but my eyes found her, always. My mind spun with fear and fascination, a labyrinth with no exit. At night, I saw the children, faceless, pale, twisted, reaching for me from the corners of my vision. They were always there, hovering at the edge of perception, silent but insistent, and the whispers, oh, the whispers, curling into my thoughts, wrapping around my skull, pressing at the edges of sanity. Come, come back. You belong with us. One evening, curiosity and dread drove me back to the river. The fog lay heavy over the black water, curling around my ankles, seeping into my clothes, wrapping my mind in icy tendrils. The air smelled of wet earth, decay, and something older, something unspeakable. She was there, as if waiting for me, standing at the edge, hair plastered to her face, dress heavy and dripping, eyes hollow and unblinking. The fog curled around her like a cloak, moving with a life of its own. The river seemed to breathe, slow and deliberate, pulling me closer even as terror rooted me in place. The children appeared first, faceless and pale, floating just above the water, silent mouths moving, twisting arms reaching, tugging at me, and then her voice wrapped around me, curling into my skull like ice. You cannot resist. You belong with us, my hijos. I tried to step back, but the ground was mud, impossible to escape. Roots snagged my feet, fog wrapped my ankles, cold, pressing into every joint. The whispers intensified, overlapping, bending reality. Shapes moved at the edges of the fog, twisting, waiting, patient, silent. My chest ached, every nerve screaming to run, but even as I fought, a part of me wanted to obey, to step closer to the sorrow, to the inevitability. My mind twisted, thoughts bending under her weight, as if the river itself were drawing me in. I fell, face first, into the mud. The fog pressed against me, curling over my head, dripping cold water down my neck. Come, mis hijos, come. I clawed at the ground, dragging myself upright, gasping, trying to escape, but the fog and river had their hold. Every step forward was a battle. She knelt in the fog, and the river rippled unnaturally around her. Her hollow eyes bore into me, infinite and patient, and I felt her sorrow coil around my chest like a serpent. The children floated above the water, twisting, reaching, pulling me toward her. I tasted the cold river on my lips, smelled the metallic tang of mud, felt the icy grip of the fog. I tried to scream, but no sound came. My limbs moved slowly, betraying me. Every instinct told me to run, yet the pull of the river was irresistible, and through it all, her whisper, "Stay with me, forever, my hijos." Branches clawed at my face, roots wrapped around my feet. Shapes twisted at the edges of vision, impossible hands, reaching, tugging, my mind frayed, bending, folding under her weight. I stumbled blindly, dragging myself toward the dim lights of the town, mud clinging to every step. Finally, I reached the edge of the fog, collapsing near the faint glow of streetlights. My clothes were soaked, mud clinging to my shoes and legs, chest heaving, lungs burning. Behind me, the river lay black and still, silent, but I knew she had not left. She was patient, eternal, waiting. Even miles away, I could feel her attention. My heart skipped in her presence, my mind tightening with her unseen grip. Every reflection in my home, every puddle, every window whispered her name, curling into my thoughts, insidious and slow. You cannot escape, mis hijos, come back. Sleep no longer brought relief. Every night, dreams dragged me back to the riverbank. Fog rolled low, water black and glassy. The children floated, faceless and silent, their tiny hands twisting in impossible angles toward me, and she was always there, kneeling among them, hair wet, hollow eyes fixed on me. Sorrow and rage layered into one unbearable presence. Even writing of these events felt dangerous. Ink smeared with sweat, sheets curled with dampness. I knew documenting her presence was like inviting her closer, bending the air, the room, reality itself. Shadows lengthened unnaturally, reaching with impossible angles, crawling toward me. I began to realize, finally, that part of me had been claimed the first night I saw her, a fragment of will, of resistance, taken silently. The river called constantly, the fog whispered, shadows twisted. She waits in every reflection, in every drop of water. One night I returned to the riverbank, determined to face her fully. The fog was heavier than ever, wrapping around my legs, dripping down my neck. Shapes moved just outside my vision, twisting, stretching, watching. The river was black glass, reflecting nothing but impossibility. She appeared slowly, as if rising from the water itself, her hair plastered to her face, dress clinging, eyes hollow and unending. Her presence pressed on my chest, curling around my lungs. I could hear her voice inside me, the river breathing with her rhythm, stay, mis hijos, forever. The children floated above the water, arms stretching unnaturally, faceless mouths opening and closing in silent pleading. Fog coiled around me, tugging, pulling, twisting my legs, my arms, my thoughts. Every instinct screamed to flee, but some unknown part of me wanted to obey. I stumbled, falling to my knees in the mud. The fog wrapped my head, dripping cold water down my face. Come, my hijos, come. Every step forward became a battle against the impossible weight of her sorrow. Every breath a struggle. The river itself seemed alive, pulsing, moving with intent, reaching out to claim me. She knelt in the mist, water swirling unnaturally around her feet. Her hollow eyes pierced me, filled with centuries of grief, rage, and longing. The children twisted above the black water, faceless and silent, tugging at me, pulling me back into her grasp. My thoughts screamed in panic, but part of my mind, trapped, frozen, wanted to obey. My body moved against my will, hands clawing at the mud, legs sinking, lungs burning, and all the while her whisper, "You are mine, forever, my hijos." Branches scraped my face, roots wrapped around my ankles, the fog pressing into my chest. Every shadow at the river's edge twisted impossibly, hands and limbs reaching, tugging, bending reality. I stumbled blindly toward the distant lights of town, mud dripping from my hair and clothes. Oh, I collapsed at the edge of the fog, gasping, trembling, shivering. My heart raced, lungs burning. The streetlights ahead were dim, flickering, almost mocking me with their normalcy. Behind me, the river was black and impossibly still, silent, but I knew she waited, patient, eternal, watching. Even miles away, her attention pressed against me. Every reflection in my house, every puddle, every window called her to me. Shadows stretched unnaturally, twisting into impossible forms that my mind struggled to comprehend. And at night, the fog crept in, curling around my ankles, brushing my arms, whispering my name. Come back, mis hijos, you belong. I became a prisoner of my own memories. Sleep offered no respite. She was in every corner of my mind, every shadow, every whisper of wind. My thoughts twisted, spiraled, folded under her sorrow. The river, the fog, the children, she moved through them all. Weeks passed. I stopped going outside at night. I avoided mirrors, windows, any source of water, and yet I felt her presence always, curling around my chest, whispering at the edge of my hearing. Even in sunlight, I sensed her, patient, eternal, waiting. The river's call pulsed inside my mind, a rhythm I could not ignore. One foggy evening, I dared to glance toward the river. Mist rolled thick over the black water, curling in unnatural patterns. Shadows danced just beyond the limits of vision, and there she was, kneeling among the faceless children, hair wet, eyes hollow, gaze fixed on me. I felt her sorrow coil around my chest like iron, squeezing, bending my thoughts, tugging at the edges of my sanity. My legs shook, my hands trembled, and even as I turned away, I could hear her whisper, soft and impossible, "You cannot escape. Mis hijos, come." I realized the truth of her legend fully. She does not tire. She does not forget. She waits, patiently, for decades, centuries, for those who have glimpsed her, those who survived her first call. The fog, the black water, the children, they are her servants. And once she chooses, resistance is nearly impossible. I avoid rivers entirely. Even the smallest puddle, a dripping faucet, or a reflection of moonlight can draw her near, and yet I feel her presence pressing, curling around my thoughts, whispering in the quiet, "You are mine, forever, mis hijos." Even now, when the fog thickens or water glistens black, I see her in my mind's eye, kneeling among the faceless children. The sorrow, rage, longing, an endless weight presses against my chest, threading into my dreams, twisting my thoughts, bending reality. I am not safe. I know I never will be. The river will call. The fog will wrap around me. And one day, inevitably, she will claim me completely. She waits, always, patient, eternal, watching from the black water, kneeling among her faceless children, hollow eyes fixed on me. And when the night is silent, when fog curls around my ankles, when shadows stretch too long, she will return. Her voice curls inside me, a relentless thread. Mis hijos, you belong to me. I cannot fight it. I cannot escape. I can only wait and pray she remains patient. Subscribe for more chilling tales.